Alrighty, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is LaughNgamez here. I'm back with another Starcraft 2 1 vs 1 bot AI cast. We have got ourselves what should be a good one here today, as it's going to be the two titans going at it. It is NegativeZero, the Protoss bot, taking on Eris, the Zerg just monster. And yes, this should be a fun one, as these two are pretty well matched against each other, as dare I say, as well as a bot can be matched against NegativeZero, because I haven't looked up at its win rate, but I imagine it's somewhere like 90+% against most bots. I think it's more within like the 30-ish range, or pardon me, the other way. It's more like in the 70-ish range against Eris, which is very good by by NegativeZero's standards. Well, when competing against NegativeZero. Anyway, yeah, so that was just a little bit of historical context as far as how these two do. You'll see as the video goes on how they're both incredibly advanced bots with lots of work put into them. And so yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, go ahead, click that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If we can get, I don't know, it is currently almost 11 as I'm casting this, so if we can get 11 likes, that would be great. And yeah, leave a comment down below. It can be total gibberish or whatever. You can comment down below if you think I'm stupid, and then yeah, I'll give you my address and we can fight or something like that. But yeah, just big thanks to everyone who does always do that support for the channel, do the thing. And then if you guys do want to support the dream of owning a overpriced Canadian house one day, consider becoming a YouTube member. The link for that is in the description down below, or the join button. So we do have a macro opening from these two bots, which is very exciting. NegativeZero isn't a bot that cheeses per se, but it is quite dynamic in when it decides to go for attacks, that kind of thing. Eris, on the other hand, is generally a macro bot too, but it does occasionally get like a little Ling heavy, that kind of thing. The bot authors definitely do experiment with other builds. Now, we do have a scouting Ling for Eris getting in here, harassing a probe that is intending to build a fourth base, so this is quite nice if it can actually delay it. As I say that, we do see the third base get up successfully though, as the Lings are just continuing to harass. A little bit of sentry pops on how it does actually bypass that Ling, which is definitely curious. I think something good when you program a bot is probably to have it automatically attack move as soon as it spawns. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map is there's an adept that's harassing for NegativeZero. No real damage getting done by it, so very good defense, as that's one of the things NegativeZero does quite well, is use adepts to kill bots. Eris's defense is very well thought out though, and it does actually clean up that adept for basically nothing. The Protoss does have that very quick third base on the way though, which is incredibly greedy. Super quick third base brought to you by speed binding, as I don't think a third base that quick is even possible for a human to get unless you cut a ridiculous amount of stuff. For now though, NegativeZero is building a ton of slow zealots, which is not something that's very good against the roaches that Eris is building. So this does make me a little concerned for the Protoss bot. Now NegativeZero is continuing to scout out though, so it can potentially adjust its composition, and we do have a robo just done for NegativeZero, so once it gets some gas we may get an immortal on the way. We could also very well get a fourth base, as NegativeZero is floating a little bit of minerals, as it is quite bottlenecked by that gas presently, but we're seeing more gas geysers get online. The Protoss bot is starting to move units all over the map. A probe kind of gets dragged out by a Ling and killed. Now there is a Twilight Council on the way here for NegativeZero. There's that first Immortal being produced. For now, though, Eris is going for an attack, and this one could be quite scary for the Protoss to defend. Just its composition is definitely not ideal if Eris micros against this. Now, there's a lot more at play than just the simple logic of Zealots being slower than Roaches, but it does seem to be going pretty darn well for Eris, as all the Zealots are gobbled up for the most part. The Adepts have to cancel their Shadas. They cannot commit on top of that. So the Blue Zerg does actually get aggressive here upon seeing that third base and is really trying to punish NegativeZero. NegativeZero hasn't lost too much yet. 12 probes, which is definitely a decent number. However, it's still chrono boosting them out in the middle of this fight. That's one thing about bots, is they do not pause production unless they are literally out of resources. So we do have NegativeZero just defending, holding the line with the shield battery. We do have an observer finally pop out for the Protoss, which means these Roaches cannot just burrow to stay safe. And this one Immortal definitely has its hands full in order to try and clean up all these Roaches. Eris is still just pumping more and more Roaches. There's a good number of Lings. I will say NegativeZero is doing a very good job tucking into this wall here. I think Eris would probably have overwhelmed it if this wall was not being used correctly. NegativeZero does have energy recharge available. It is not energy recharging this shield battery. I mean, the new patch definitely changes things up a little bit, but I think that would be something that would benefit the Protoss in this situation. For now, NegativeZero is holding the line. It does lose a cybernetics core, so it's got to rebuild that. And Eris is just controlling these Roaches all individually, poking the Protoss. Lings are now coming in to try and complete this flood. If we look at the production tab, Eris is still just building units, trying to crash the gates. The two Immortals are kind of running out of a buffer here, as Eris is just going for it. The Roaches pick off a sentry. They've been killing probes this entire time. The third base is just about to go down for NegativeZero. That would be a massive blow to the Protoss. Eris definitely wants that kind of damage to get done. We have NegativeZero tagging that its wall was breached. It's attempting to get that back in his, well, back and walled up. But pathing units did cause problems there, which is definitely a problem bot authors have a hard time solving, as there's lots of moving parts. So NegativeZero gives up, builds that Robo Bay in a different position. The Protoss is only at 32 army supply against the 84 of Eris, which is now just throwing up a fourth base. I think it's made like 2 extra drones so far. We do see a lair on the way, so Eris may finally be taking its foot off the gas, as these two Immortals with their +1 attack have been able to pop off a decent number of Roaches. I mean, how many units have died this game? 30 Roaches in the attack, 62 Lings. NegativeZero has traded pretty well, all things considered. Most of its resources lost, or at least a good chunk of it coming from dead probes, as they have had the misfortune of constantly being rallied into danger. But now NegativeZero is a little out of position, so Eris actually goes right into that natural, and yeah, NegativeZero's natural is in a lot of trouble. Probes have to get pulled to fight. Very good behavior there from the probes, actually buffering for the Immortal. And so Eris commits a lot to this attack. Was it worth it to dive into the natural like that? It's tough to say. I want to say no, because that is a lot of army supply that went down, whereas NegativeZero didn't really lose too many units during that fight. Not losing the Immortal was big, thanks to the probe pull. The Protoss did manage to start a new third base while this was going on. Eris, meanwhile, just as rocking it on 4 bases. Looks like it may be building yet another base, as the Blue Zerg is actually having a bit of an uncharacteristic buildup of resources here, as Eris was at like 2,000 minerals there. It sort of solves that problem a little bit by building a hatchery and firing up 38 speedlings, which is definitely nice. But Eris still bottlenecked by gas here. It's just working off of 2, building all of these Roaches. And so we'll see if it's able to balance that out a little bit. It could definitely build a few hatcheries. And there we have it, as Eris begins pumping its larva into drones, and is all of a sudden going to just use that crazy bot macro to go from 40 drones to 60 in like less than a minute, it seems. Now, Lings are looking for some damage, as Eris is controlling those independently, actually thinking they can take this skirmish, but it doesn't work out too well, so they end up retreating. And then we do have NegativeZero on 3 bases, trying to sort of stabilize a little bit after that just non-stop onslaught. What an exciting start to a bot game that we've had here, as NegativeZero is now moving out, cleaning up some creep tumors with these stalkers and observers grouped up with them. Immortals are moving out as well, so NegativeZero does need to be a little bit careful here, but at the same time, it can move out and really get some damage done potentially, as Eris has completely paused building units. The Zerg is at 74 drones. It's actually floating a ton of resources, and yeah, Eris fires up 80 drones, or pardon me, 20 drones, going up to 90, which is not good in this situation. And so we do see a bit of a rough flow there for Eris, as it sort of was floating lots of resources for a moment, and then it's like, what do I do? I'm not sure what it was waiting on there, but making 20 drones would not have been the right decision if NegativeZero had continued to push forward. But again, NegativeZero doesn't have perfect info. It doesn't know that Eris just built all of those drones, and it actually elects to fall back a little bit. What it's waiting for, I'm not exactly sure. We do have more Immortals building. It's getting 3-1 upgrades on the way. Those are some really nice upgrades, seeing as how Eris is just firing up +1 attack now. Things are actually looking quite good for NegativeZero in this situation. It's going to have to give Eris like another minute or two, at least, if the Zerg is going to stand up to NegativeZero. Now Eris is getting a Dropper Lord, maybe for a bit of a Queen car, which is something I haven't really highlighted in a little bit. We're now getting Infestors added in for the Zerg, a Spire on the way, a Hive on the way, and let's see here, as we do have Stalkers moving on out for NegativeZero, looking to poke the Zerg a bit. There is no blink on these yet, so they actually can't do their fancy footwork to get on out of there, so a little bit of an overcommitment. And that is nice for Eris to punish this, and just incredible behavior from Eris here, saying, yes, I can dive on top of these stalkers. The combat simulator that it uses, just incredible, because so many bots in that situation. Hold the phone for a minute, as we do have a ton of roaches committing on in for Eris, a whopping 27 of them diving in. However, they are attacking into 8 Immortals, which is not an easy fight. Burrow doesn't help those roaches when they are pretty much getting one shot by a volley of Immortal fire. So while I was just complimenting the Ling engagement, the Roach engagement does not go too well, largely due to composition, due to upgrades as well. 0-0 Zerg against 3-1 Protoss. Now, Roaches are getting cornered as NegativeZero tries to bring the hammer down a little bit. We do see a Fungal tossed out of an Infestor, but that is the last thing that Infestor will ever toss out as it dies. We did have another Infestor die there, as the Zealots were able to get on top of it, and Eris is going to need a miracle engagement here, or at the very least to just drive NegativeZero back a bit. We do have Corruptors added into the mix for the Zerg to try and push the Colossi away. Hydra's being added in. We are getting 2-1 upgrades on the way for Eris, so the Zerg really is teching here. We also have a Greater Spire on the way for Eris, and that is something that NegativeZero and Protoss bots have struggled with traditionally, is Broodlords. So if Eris can hold on another 2 minutes or so, get out some Broodlords, that would definitely be big. For now, though, I am actually quite concerned. If NegativeZero just decides to commit on in, I think we will be looking at a dead Zerg. Like, you may be saying, but the supplies are close. Yes, but the quality of the army for NegativeZero is so darn good. Like, 10 Immortals, the upgrade lead, even getting shields now, too, is phenomenal. We are getting Colossi added in for NegativeZero, but take a look at all these units that do not shoot up. If we see Broodlords from Eris, we will be looking at a totally different situation here, and that Greater Spire is done, so Broodlords can morph pretty much as soon as Eris wants to. I think we definitely need to see those. Corruptors are dealing with Observers and trying to drive the Colossi away, but they would be better turning into Broodlords right now. Still a bit of a tough engagement for NegativeZero going up this ramp. Ling surrounded Disruptor. Disruptor did get the Nova off. There's Infestors in the back as well. No Neural Parasite being utilized yet. We're getting lots of fungal growths tossed down, although it takes a lot of fungals to kill Immortals. It does soften them up a little bit. However, we do see Eris falling down in supply. Those Corruptors not morphing into Broodlords. Eris is kind of panicking, rebuilding drones, building just odd amounts of units here. And then, yeah, NegativeZero is pushing on in, so quite unfortunate, I think, so far that Eris hasn't fired up Broodlords. There's still a chance that it can come back in this game, I think, if it does manage to morph, like, all these Corruptors into Broodlords at the same time. I don't know how the programming of Eris works, sort of what it prioritizes. It may be saying, I cannot turn these Corruptors into Broodlords, as then what would kill the Colossi? And there's definitely lots of pits of logic that bots can fall into. So Eris, yes, not making those critical Broodlords, and now losing bases, just kind of crumbling under the weight of NegativeZero. And we have seen in the past, once a bot falls down in supply against NegativeZero, they kind of fall off a cliff because production is just so slow. And then, of course, the economy is compromised too. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do think we're going to have a victor here in NegativeZero. What a great game, though. The onslaught from Eris at the start of the match was incredibly vicious, and I think most other bots would have died to that, as NegativeZero's positioning was just really well done. We did get to see Eris's really good Ling micro this game. Again, though, NegativeZero, it just performs so well utilizing the Protoss units, as it's just like Protoss units, they're high HP, they tend to have pretty good range, which definitely loans themselves to trading out very well over these prolonged bot battles where the units are constantly engaging. And yeah, very well done. So ladies and gentlemen, if you watch this entire match, make sure to go ahead, click that like button. It actually ends a little bit sooner than I thought, as Eris is one of the bots that does GG out. And so Eris taps on out. Yeah, click that like button, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel. I'm actually thinking about it right now. Do all those things, and stay tuned as we'll jump on into another game. Okay, so here we are in the second game. As I did that outro, you guys can kind of tell that I don't necessarily plan ahead whether I'm going to do 1 or 2 matches, or 3 matches, potentially, a video. As, yeah, sometimes it's like, okay, I like to try and make the videos a little longer. I know you guys enjoy them, as it does kind of prevent the ending from being spoiled, which is definitely something I'm a big fan of too. And I'll try and keep it up. So we've got a gateway on the way here for NegativeZero, going up against Anibot in this game. So yes, another NegativeZero match, taking on the sort of, I can't really call it like the Wily Terran, because that's like Mulebot or something. Anibot is a very solid Terran bot. It's personally a bot that I do hope we get to see some updates for in the future. There's like Annie Dev out there, but it has been a while since there's been a patch from the bot author, which is definitely one of the things that we do live with when it comes to being fans of these bots. Is your favorite bot author could go on a cruise for 3 months or something like that, or they probably wish they could go on a cruise for 3 months and not update their bot. Although knowing a lot of programmers and bot authors, I think they'd probably have a laptop and be programming on such a cruise. But my point is that life happens, these bots are hobbies, which is why we might not get updates for bots for a while, and then suddenly the bot author will have a weekend off or something and say, yeah, what about that awesome bot I was working on? Or they'll be thinking about it. That kind of thing. And so, yeah, that's just the beauty of the bot scene, as we also get surprises of new bot authors entering, or old bot authors reactivating their bots after a long time. And it definitely does keep things fresh, as the competition is always evolving. We're even having Blizzard throw the odd wrench into the works, as, for example, we're getting a new Starcraft 2 patch. I know the bots just got updated to the latest one via some map magic, but there is a new patch that was, I think it's live now on Starcraft 2, which means the bots will be behind on versions for a little bit. And I'm sure all the bot authors are going, why? As much as StarCraft 2 updates are good, they definitely do break things, because that's just how programming works. And so we'll see. We'll see whether we get that update at some point. Again, fortunately, bots and bot games evolve in different ways, so we don't really need the game to be updated to see new things, which is the beauty of these bot games. A forge goes on up here for NegativeZero. You may be saying it's 3 minutes in. Why aren't you talking about the game? And well, the answer is there's not too much going on. So I think I actually did a pretty good job of killing 3 minutes. And so this game is definitely an interesting one. We have NegativeZero scouting out Antibot, seeing 2 racks, and 2 completed racks before the command center, I believe, and then saying, hey, don't go for an expo. Like, compare the NegativeZero pretty much had a 3rd base in the PvZ matchup from the previous match. In this game, it's like 1 base. This is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna build a ton of stalkers and probably try and murder Antibot. So it definitely is interesting how this is such a pivot for NegativeZero. What goes into that, whether it's the matchups, I'm not sure. As yeah, it really is a stark contrast, which is, again, one of the beautiful things of NegativeZero is that it does play late macro games, but then it also does very well in the early game. So, yeah, that's something interesting to ponder. Why is NegativeZero like, don't expand? And in the other game, it's like, yeah, expand. It's safe to do so. Or maybe it's just one of those things early game pushes tend not to do as well against Zerg if you're a one-basing Protoss. So let's see, as NegativeZero is moving out for a bit of an attack. It's got +1 attack halfway done. Not chrono boosting that, so I'm not sure what it's saving that energy for. However, we do have a Nexus on the way behind this, so there is a follow-up plan for the Protoss. Antibot, meanwhile, is trying to get up a 3rd base, and I'm a little concerned for the Terran, as Antibot has just been pumping out raw Marines. It's on a ridiculous 6 barracks right now, and is going to have to contend with a ton of Stalkers here. NegativeZero may actually be getting some of its Stalkers cornered, which is really good for Antibot. Otherwise, they could have kited those Marines endlessly, so that is a really good trade for the red Terran. However, these Marines are starting to chase Stalkers. We'll see how far they're going to chase them, as leash ranges tend to be a thing. This does allow the other 2 Stalkers in that natural to escape just about. Oh, they're so silly. They could have made it out there, but again, they saw the threat of the Marines and figured, oh, we better go on in. They are getting a few SCVs during this, and are definitely sowing chaos inside the base of Antibot, but all in all, that went very, very poorly for NegativeZero. How many Stalkers died there? 5 Stalkers for a measly 9 Marines and 3 SCVs. The map Persephone kind of punishing NegativeZero there with the pathing a little bit, and that is one of the difficult things you have to deal with as a bot author. You have to consider all sorts of terrain when it comes to programming your pathing, and yeah, that was quite painful for NegativeZero, because if you look at that army against non-upgraded Marines, the Stalkers, in theory, should just be able to kite and micro against the Marines endlessly, but it just goes to show even the best bots do have some flaws in them. Antibot, meanwhile, is now going for a little bit of multi-prong harassment, which is one of its key features, sending some Marines up to this base. It is empty. The rest of them are heading over to this location, it would seem. The Terran is just about to have Stimpack done, so it definitely could go for it. However, we actually see all the Marines stimming after a hallucinated Phoenix. So speaking of bot mistakes, there's one, as Antibot goes for a kind of suicidal attack with these Marines. They do target down a few units, but that was kind of the opposite of what happened earlier, as I think it only got like 3 Stalkers, a Zealot, and a Sentry there for what was probably like 21 Marines, something like that. Now, Antibot is continuing to pump a ridiculous amount of Marines. This is an interesting build, and that's actually what the build is called. I should have mentioned that earlier on. It is Suicidal Marine Build, which is something that I think is showing true here, as it's just sending them around the outskirts of the map where NegativeZero will not find them all. These Marines are overstimmed. Well, they have already stimmed, which is overstimmed, I'm guessing because of a hallucinated unit. And then we do just have the Marines moving out for some multi-prong harassment. checking for the outer bases, a nice location to hit. And this is just a very cool idea put into work. Like, what happens if I just send constant hit squads at my opponent? Will their army ever be out of position, and maybe I'll just get a nice counterattack or something like that? We do have groups of Marines crossing like ships in the night. These Marines are going to this furthest right base, missing the third that's building of -0. These guys are going into the natural. They may find some probes. We'll see how good of a trade they can get, and the answer is going to be not very good as -0 goes to work, using that prism to pick up some of these units. Do we even get probes picked up? Yes, we do. How cool is that? Meanwhile, these other Marines are moving on in towards that third base, but -0 repositions its army. We see injured stalkers getting picked up. There's no blink, but that's okay when you got unlimited APM and a warp prism. As that micro is just next level from -0. Then there is a lot more suicidal Marines running around for Antibot. We are getting Medivacs added into the mix to help heal this up. Cyclones being added in too. More and more bases for the Red Terran. Antibot is backing this up with a really strong economy. A much better economy than -0, which has just been kind of chilling as it's been under attack constantly. So Antibot moving out. This is what, 30 Marines? That is, I'm guessing, another 30? Yeah, I think so. That one's 28, I think. The other one was 30 Marines, so a slight Nope, they were the same number. 28, I think. Anyway, we do have Antibot moving out with these groups of Marines. The stimming being baited out by the hallucinated Phoenix is definitely a little bit of a painful oversight, as I do believe bots think they're real units in the game. And so, yeah, that's very painful for Antibot. Now, the Red Terran is moving on in. Once again, these are +1 Marines, so they're actually putting out a lot of damage. Some of them section off towards that mineral line, killing a decent number of probes. Actually, a phenomenal number of -0's probes have gone down this game as Antibot grabs that Nexus and then just continues to spam Marines. We are getting a start transition from Antibot. It's still building lots of Marines, though. More bases, Magfield on the way. But -0 has taken so much damage this game. Its one saving grace could be that it is building Colossi now, which against a mass Marine strategy is about as good as it gets. A probe baits out a ridiculous amount of HP on some Marines that were definitely overstimmed there. And then Antibot dives into that natural. I really like how it splits the Marines to ensure it gets some probe kills. The Stalkers are chasing after Cyclones now, which is part of what Antibot's transitioning into. I mean, the Marines were doing very well against the mass Stalker composition, so it could be bad for Antibot that it's transitioning, but of course it doesn't really know that. These Medivacs are doing a good job escaping from those Stalkers. Nicely done. Blink is on the way for -0 as well. That's going to improve the efficiency of these Stalkers, but just because Antibot is quote-unquote transitioning doesn't mean that it is going for... that it isn't going to change up, or that it's going to keep the same tactics. And it is, as we do have just groups of Marines being sent out once more, as it's pretty much keeping with the same strategy here. Now, there is a Raven on the way for Antibot. Lots of bases up too, but here we see these Marines moving on out, finding some damage as -0 is completely caught out with its army out of position, and Antibot is now going to gut that natural base. There is a Colossi, but pardon my observing, that Colossi was actually picked off. We may have to rewind to see what happened to it later on, but the natural of -0 is gone. Antibot's got 6,000 minerals in the bank. We're going to have to see some very good Stalker micro. The Prism is actually going to go down, and it seems that even -0 cannot micro perfectly against what is 71 Marines on the map right now. Another Colossi does pop out, but here we see Stalkers getting chased down by those Marines. They do have very high speed when they're stimmed, and yeah, -0 cannot afford to replace any units that die, as it's on one base, one measly base, against all these Marines, all this production from Antibot. Antibot's now adding in battle cruisers into the mix. It's getting +3 attack. -0 has +3 attack, but I think it benefits the bot that's building a ton of Marines more. There is an aggressive blink by -0, which in most cases I think would have been okay, but Antibot will take that trade any day of the week. We do have a genuine Phoenix for NegativeZero, actually lifting up some SCVs, but they double lifted, so they didn't actually kill anything there. The Protoss is moving out, going for a bit of a Hail Mary attack. The problem is there's battle cruisers, there is 59 Marines, and look at this, Antibot is moving out with some more units, and I think they are going for one of those run-bys. I guess it's a run-by. The Marines are stimming. NegativeZero does go for an attack towards a base of Antibot, trying to save the game by going for that Hail Mary attack. We're getting a new Nexus being built. We're getting a Sentry being built for NegativeZero behind this, but look at this. There's +2 Marines moving on in, and yeah, NegativeZero is being driven back, so I think Antibot has kind of checkmated the best Protoss bot out there with just a very good build and just simple but effective strategy. I guess that's really the best way to sum up Antibot. Like, these moves are relatively straightforward to program, I imagine, but they're just very effective. It is backed up by good micro and then good macro behind it. Cool transitions. There's not really a lot of holes in this plan, but it worked out very good. Following up just off the back of NegativeZero's initial misstep, and it was incredibly well done. So ladies and gentlemen, I know I've already done one outro, but you know the drill, all that good stuff. And I do hope everyone has a good weekend. I think that's when this video will be uploading. I'll be moving, so it's gonna be good fun. And yeah, let's see here. I'll try and get my PC set up within reasonable time to keep watching some bots. But there we have it, Antibot upsetting. A pretty big upset at, yeah. GG.